KBLA Talk 1580 on all of our socials, then you're missing out. Download our app and find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and on the web at KBLA 1580.
That's right.
Again, you can find all of our socials at KBLA 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
By the way, if you miss any of our weekday shows in real time, you can always catch up by checking out the podcasts of your favorite shows at your leisure. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
Follow the leader.
Oh my God.
Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader.
I wish that I could fly into the sky so very high, just like a dragonfly. I fly above the trees, over the seas, in all degrees, to anywhere I please. Oh, I want to get away. I want to fly away.
Welcome forward. This is Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580. Again, welcome forward, KBLA Talk 1580. This is Jesse Jackson Jr. I'm particularly honored that Dr. Nia Cordelay-Corte, our White House correspondent, is joining us for the next hour as we safely drive through Los Angeles and through the various interstates home. I want to thank Dr. Corte for joining us today. Good evening, Dr. Corte. Dr. Corte? Okay. Well, this is Jesse Jackson Jr. I'm waiting for Dr. Corte to join us in studio momentarily. We are discussing, and we're discussing with Dr. Hill, some of the critical issues that confront us very shortly as African Americans, as people of color, and as progressives. As a coalition builder, Dr. Corte has corporate, and he's a corporate social responsibility scholar and trusted community advocate, has worked on a range of pioneering community, state, and nationwide initiatives. Consequence. As a professor, his focus on personal leadership and team building in the MBA program at the University of Maryland Robert H. Smith School of Business challenged his students to better understand themselves and the acts as agents of change. We are welcoming Dr. Corte to our show momentarily. Now, one of the things that I want us to focus on as we begin to reflect upon what the election results mean, what the final 49 days of Joe Biden's campaign represents, or presidency represents, is whether or not we are going to organize ourselves and think of our position in the society as one of resistance. The church is going to play a very, very important role in that. Our civil rights organizations are going to play a very, very important role in that. We're not going to get media from traditional sources, which is why I believe that the KBLA Talk 1580 family is so important for how we receive our news and our information going forward. Encourage your friends to download the app of KBLA Talk 1580. KBLA Talk 1580 has some important hosts that will be hosting in the new year, some profound ideas that will be discussed, and KBLA will be a source of organizing for progressives, not only in California, but in every market that Tavis Smiley's voice is being carried. It is my sincere hope to be a part of that team and a part of that family as we begin to work our way forward through spirit of loyalty to our nation, a spirit of compassion, a spirit of patriotism, but also a spirit of loyal opposition. I often share with Dr. Cornel West and others that I believe in a new patriotism. I think what made Martin Luther King Jr. so different from other leaders in our nation's history is he was deeply rooted in the American dream, deeply rooted in the Constitution. Dr. King understood the Negro contribution to the Constitution, the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, establishing the premise of states of human rights over states' rights, human rights over states' rights. For states had the states' right to protect slavery, then states' rights can never be human rights. We need a strong central government in order to secure the rights of the people in our 50 different states. Without a strong central government fighting for our human rights, which Donald Trump seeks to devolve, dismantle, disrupt, the states themselves are incapable of coordination when it comes to basic human rights. Certainly that was the case for African Americans during the Civil War and the pre-bellum period, but it is also the case for women in the modern era. And so when we come back, we are going to be talking with Dr. Corte, Kamala and the Motherland, and Me is one of his great works. We'll catch up with him on what's going on with Sister Harris and organizing the Democratic Party. He took an amazing trip to the Motherland with Sister Harris, and we want to learn more about that. But we also want to connect our station and our work with the work that must occur in Washington, D.C., as Dr. Corte's voice is going to be a part of that future. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580 when we come forward.
While you're stuck in traffic, we can at least bring you up to speed on the news of the day. You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. only on KBLA Talk 1580. Are you an entrepreneur looking to take your business to new heights? KBLA Talk 1580 is your partner in success. Every day, we celebrate and elevate Black-owned businesses across our community. Our KBLA SMB Marketplace currently features The Cookie Dip, Badass Bakes, Hair Concoction, Higher Education Accreditation Consulting, LACC Radiology Technology Department, and Malik Books. Your business deserves to be heard. Let KBLA Talk 1580 amplify your voice and connect you with our powerful community of listeners. Email smb@kbla1580.com today. That's smb@kbla1580.com. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your flag.
What if you could hear your favorite song for the first time again? Introducing the all-new, reimagined Nissan Kicks. With an available Bose Personal Plus sound system that uses speakers in the headrest to create a 360-degree listening experience. You've never heard anything like this. Reimagine your music and your drive. Experience the all-new, reimagined Nissan Kicks for yourself at nissanusa.com today.
Available feature. Bose is a registered trademark of the Bose Corporation.
We're thrilled to announce that the Dear Future Wifey podcast is now available on the Urban One Podcast Network. This show, hosted by Latiris R. Whitfield, explores the journey of discovering and rediscovering love and relationships. With over 500,000 subscribers on YouTube, Dear Future Wifey has become a prototype for discussions about love and relationships. Learn how to rediscover love, heal, and have faith in relationships. Go to urbanonepodcast.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Imagine a Los Angeles where everyone can thrive, where communities have access to the resources they need to succeed. That's the vision of Detours Mentoring Group, Inc. They're dedicated to improving life in LA County by providing educational support, employment assistance, and spaces for community engagement. By 2050, they want LA to be the best place to connect, create, learn, live, and play. They're working toward an education system that's well-resourced and culturally responsive, becoming a hub for artists and innovators, and making sure everyone has access to healthy food, quality healthcare, and safe housing. It's about building a future where we all have the chance to succeed. We invite you to learn more about their mission and get involved with Detours Mentoring Group, Inc. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
Hi, this is Jesse Jackson Jr., KBLA Talk 1580. We are now joined with Dr. Nee Quartey. Dr. Quartey, how are you?
I'm well. How are you, Jesse?
Man, listen, I was a United States congressman. I was never in the United States Senate, but that was the first filibuster I had to ever do a few minutes ago.
Oh, my goodness.
I
was
felt
it
like
really?
a senator. Yeah, I felt like a senator, and I don't want to do that ever again. Anyway, how are you, Doc?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Happy Monday to you, and season's greetings.
Happy Monday to you, and season's greetings to you. There's a lot going on in Washington, D.C., both in the 49 days that are left in the Biden administration and the transition to, well, an unconventional cabinet. And you've made the argument that we need to keep our eyes on the number twos. The number twos. Dr. Quartey, please expand that argument for us.
Absolutely. We do need to keep our eye on the number twos, meaning not just the folks that President-elect Trump is appointing in his cabinet, but who are those second-in-charge folks? And so when you take a look at the Department of Justice, for example, there's been a lot of talk around former Representative Matt Gaetz being nominated as AG, and we, of course, know that he has withdrawn his nomination. But that number two used to be former President Trump, President-elect Trump's personal attorney, right? And so that gives us some insight as to who he really wants running the day-to-day in the Department of Justice, even if the replacement for Matt Gaetz is the former Attorney General for the state of Florida. Basically, these are all loyalists. These are all loyalists. There are a number of people who have a checkered past in terms of leading with integrity, but these are all folks who are willing to be all about Trump. And so, again, it's not just the appointees, but it's the second in line. We've got to look at who they are because we already know that we can expect a lot of chaos. These folks are not being appointed to run agencies efficiently or effectively. There are a lot of these folks that don't have the background that would justify such an appointment, but they're not being appointed to make things work. They're being appointed to deconstruct things, to be a wrecking ball of sorts, to sow chaos and division. They're being appointed in the spirit of vulture capitalism in many cases, and who the top person is, who the number two is, matters.
Your thoughts on how disruptive it will be for some of the critical programs that impact African Americans, from the education department to health care to housing. How devastating could this be for the progress that we've made historically by securing these anti-discrimination rights?
I mean, first things first, I really have to give a hat tip to the shoulders that we stand on, shoulders that include the work of your father, Jesse Jackson Sr., and so many other folks who have fought long and hard for progress in this country, progress that I benefit from, progress that you benefit from, and that so many of our leaders, learners, and listeners benefit from. When I think back to the Voting Rights Act, the Civil Rights Act, the Fair Housing Act, when I think about the immigration bill back in the 60s that made it possible for my father to immigrate from Ghana to the United States, where he studied at an HBCU, where he met my mom in Texas, right? my father's story wouldn't be possible without a lot of this work that took place, a lot of this legislative progress that took place, a lot of folks who made it their business to say, you know what, we're going to build a more perfect union. And we see each and every one of those things under threat. For folks, who have enjoyed the benefit of fair housing laws, right? I think we can expect, particularly from a president-elect who has a very challenging past. I think that's being maybe too nice about it. He has a checkered past. When it comes to renting to people like you and me, to renting to black people, right? Well, guess what? He has appointed, a black man to lead the Department of Housing and Urban Development. A black man who used to be a former linebacker.
A black man.
Right? A black man, in a cabinet that's full of white men, that's full of white people, right? And so when people show you who they really are, believe them the first time, we can expect someone who is no friend to civil and human rights, someone who is no friend to our civil liberties, no friend to our hard-fought personal freedoms, and we can't take our eye off of that. There's going to be a lot of shock and awe. The only thing I would say, there's going to be a lot of shock and awe in the coming weeks and the coming months. And I think we've got to be careful not to wear ourselves out, trying to cover each and every wild and crazy and bombastic thing coming out of the White House. I think we got to keep our eye on those treasured legislative wins, those really important norms in our country, those things that make us a democracy. And we have our work cut out for us, but those things are worth watching, worth defending.
I've gotten used to the idea of a black president. I had 8 years of Barack Obama, and I've gotten used to the idea of an African-American woman as vice president of the United States, now as Democratic nominee who unfortunately lost an election on November the 5th. Michelle Obama said that's the new black job, right? So my mind is kind of set right there on our possibilities. But my life experience says that the black job in most administrations is HUD, Housing and Urban Development, whether it's Franklin Pierce or whether it was Sister Marsha Fudge, who I love to death. They give the black job, urban development, somebody black whose primary job it is to keep the Indians on the reservation. And by that I mean he will be at all the NAACP events, all the NAN events, all the Rainbow events, all the SCLC events. He'll be at all the Martin Luther King Jr. events on behalf of the administration with no meaningful housing program like that which was offered by Vice President Harris, $25,000 for first-time homeowners. We can probably expect nothing like that from this new HUD secretary. Dr. Corte, am I right or am I wrong?
I think that's a fair assessment. I think it's a very fair assessment. We're certainly talking about the president-elect's pick, famed former NFL player Scott Turner, who will be leading the Department of Housing and Urban Development. I mean, look at the work that former HUD Secretary Marsha Fudge did on her watch to address some of the disparities that we have seen historically when it comes to home appraisals. The former HUD Secretary certainly has been a guest on my show, A More Perfect Union, right here on KBLA Talk 1580. She's been no stranger to KBLA, talking about that work that was informed by her lived experience. She would talk very often about, the neighborhood that she lives in Ohio, and how she discovered that her home appraised for much different, far less than a neighboring home with a white owner. And so, she's not working in the abstract. She wasn't working in the abstract in terms of addressing that issue. It was based on her lived experience, based on experiences that she has leaned into in her role as HUD secretary, in her role before that as a member of Congress, in her role before that as a local mayor. And so I think the deficit that we have with picks like Scott Turner is that lived experience is not comparable to the folks that understand the importance of not just protecting on the gains that this country has made in terms of fair and equitable housing, but building upon that, and building upon that together in community. And so, we're going to give incoming HUD Secretary Scott Turner a fair shake, but I think there's room for cautious optimism at its best.
I remember Colin Powell as Secretary of Defense. I remember Condoleezza Rice as Secretary of State. I remember Ron Brown as chairman of the Democratic National Committee. I've seen over the course of my life, I remember at the Labor Department, Dr. Alexis Ehrman. I am offended by a cabinet that doesn't look like America, that is not reflective of America. And maybe the cabinet selections themselves, Dr. Corte, are actually a signal as to what is coming. It looks like a resegregated cabinet. And I thought we had lived beyond that. Even Republicans have made an effort to recognizing, even in the most conservative administrations, the role that qualified African Americans are playing. And now we've got this panel that's being set up, the DOGE panel, Department of Government Efficiency, which sounds like get rid of black folks. I don't mean no harm, Dr. Corte, but in Washington, we're going to be counting on you to tell us if that's what's actually happening. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, here we have folks like Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, who have been appointed to lead this government agency, where the authority doesn't seem to match the headlines. But this is an example of business people that truly believe that you can go in and run government just like a business. And I think they will find very quickly that D.C. doesn't operate like that. Now, is there room to rid out waste, fraud, and abuse? Of course. That's possible at any and every level of government. But the means by which they do that, the made-up authority that they may use in order to do that is going to be problematic. And we know, for example, that there are a number of federal government employees that are, fearing the loss of their jobs. Certainly, Project 2025, which is a conservative manifesto that President-elect Trump has tried to distance himself from before really just leaning into it. There are a number of folks that are a part of his transition team. There are a number of folks that are expected to serve in his administration that played an outsized role in developing Project 2025, which intends to turn a number of government civil servants, federal employees, into political appointees. Right? There are some estimates of something like 50,000 federal workers that they are hoping to sort of push out and make way for loyalists of President Trump. And so I can tell you right now from many of the sources that I've spoken to that are civil servants, a lot of them are pondering the question around, do they stay? And if so, where do they go? This is a real challenge, not just in Washington, D.C., but as you know, there are federal workers across the country, federal workers that we depend on to keep us safe from harm. And the fact that they are fearing for their future, for their livelihood, that shouldn't make any of us sleep any easier.
You know, fighting to desegregate neighborhoods has been a long part of our historic struggle since the inception of the nation as African Americans. We have a lot invested in the Secretary of HUD. Fighting for global recognition of Africa, sub-Saharan African countries, and South American countries, we have as a people a big stake in who the Secretary of State is and the Condoleezza Rice and the Colin Powells of life who've served in that role. I can't think of a single level of government where our struggle does not have a cross-section or an intersection with that cabinet. And to see the present cabinet completely separate, apart, and devoid of the struggles that it took to make housing fair, that it took to have a more global perspective of how African and African nations should be treated, is of profound concern for me. I don't just see these cabinet appointments as people who go through the Senate. I see these cabinet appointments as the conclusion of a long, long history of the struggle of the Negro in America. I'm Jesse Jackson, Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580. When we come forward, we'll be with Dr. Corte.
Well, it could just be ours. Let's fade into the sun. Let your spirit fly. We are one. Just for a little fun. Oh, 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 yeah. I want to get away. I want to fly away.
The biggest names.
The best conversations.
You're riding with Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Tyreek Wynn with 4 things you should know from BIN News. Community members are mourning the death of a civil rights pioneer in South Carolina. James Solomon Jr. was one of 3 black students who desegregated the University of South Carolina in 1963. He recently passed away at the age of 94. The city of Montgomery, Alabama is commemorating Rosa Parks and the anniversary of the historic Montgomery bus boycott. It's been 69 years since Parks refused to give up her seat on the bus to a white man. The Chicago, Illinois black man is accused of killing a West Suburban Oak Park police officer in the line of duty. Jarrell Thomas faces several charges, including first-degree murder in the shooting death of Detective Alan Reddins, who is black. Joining in on the holiday festivities, Dairy Queen is bringing back 2 frozen desserts. DQ says the Peppermint Hot Cocoa Blizzard and DQ Frozen Hot Chocolate are now available. Get BIN News on demand 24/7 at BINnews.com.
The Sepulveda Pass stall on the 405. This is northbound before Moraga. Carpool lane has been blocked. Delays out of Culver City from Venice Boulevard. Beyond the stall, you still have a tough drive all the way to Nordhoff in North Hills. Tustin, metal debris of some type on the 5, northbound before Tustin Ranch Road. Last seen in the right lane with a slow drive out of Irvine getting away from Jeffrey Road. Let's also look at Santa Monica. 10 eastbound before Cloverfield. You're on the brakes all the way to the 5 in Boyle Heights. And the drive on the 5, making your way southbound, slowing down out of Burbank from Olive to the 605.
Want to save up to 50% on new blinds? Blindster.com offers custom-made blinds, shades, and shutters at prices far less than big box retailers. And right now, save up to 50% off through December 10th during our Cyber Week sale. Blindster.com.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
When Clippers guard James Harden hit 6 3-pointers Sunday night against Denver, he joined Steph Curry as the only 2 players in NBA history with 3,000 threes. The 35-year-old Harden has dropped 3,004 3-pointers in his 15-year NBA career. Curry, in his 16th season, has the all-time record with 3,810. Harden has stepped up big time to lead the Clippers during Kawhi Leonard's absence. The Clippers are 13-9 while Kawhi tries to recover from his chronic knee condition. Harden is averaging 22 points and 8 assists. Harden is also one of only 4 NBA players to drop 40 points or more in 100 games. The other 3, Wilt Chamberlain, Kobe, and Michael Jordan. The Clippers are back in action Tuesday against Portland at the Intuit Dome in Inglewood. Congrats to Jackson State football coach T.C. Taylor. Taylor was named SWAC Coach of the Year. Jackson State is 10-2. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
Follow the leader.
KBLA Talk 1580.
Follow the leader.
If you're not following KBLA Talk 1580 on all of our socials, then you're missing out. Download our app and find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and on the web at KBLA 1580.
That's right.
Again, you can find all of our socials at KBLA 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
By the way, if you miss any of our weekday shows in real time, you can always catch up by checking out the podcast of your favorite shows at your leisure. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
Got your blood.
Follow the leader.
Following the leader.
Oh my God. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader.
Linking social justice and climate justice all year long.
We're unapologetically progressive.
KBLA Talk 1580.
Hello, LA. Metro is your partner for thriving communities and sustainable travel. We're dedicated to providing better transit for everyone. When you go Metro, you're more connected to jobs, healthcare, school, and loved ones. It's the way of the future. Start your journey at metro.net.
This season, Chevy brings classic pairings, cookies and milk, mistletoe and kisses, and your holiday plans and a new Chevy. Silverado 1500 gives you power and capability with 430 pound-feet of torque to haul your holiday tree. Equinox EV and the all-new Equinox offer award-winning quality and style to see you through the holiday season. See why Chevy makes everything better and brighter. Chevrolet, together let's drive.
KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 is committed to self-care and community well-being. Walk Good LA was formed in June 2020, inspired by the Black Lives Matter movement and the beginning stages of the COVID-19 pandemic. What began as a few minutes of breath work and yoga meditation before protests against police brutality turned into a safe space for the community to heal in hard times. The immensely positive response from the community transformed the momentum into a movement. Today, Walk Good LA is a black and brown-led community wellness organization based in Los Angeles. They provide spaces for healing through community yoga classes, guided meditations, hikes, run clubs, and other activations throughout Los Angeles that attract hundreds of members weekly. With the help of Propel and Michael B. Jordan, they now have a yoga and wellness studio in Los Angeles called the Walk Good Yard. To join their mailing list and connect with healing spaces, please visit walkgoodla.org. That's walkgoodla.org. Or find them on Instagram at walkgoodla. This is a community call to action, a community call to healing from KBLA Talk 1580.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr., KBLA Talk 1580 Talk. I want to welcome our guest, Dr. Nia Cordelay. Dr. Cordelay. I'm particularly honored that you're here because of your unusual access to the White House. Dr. Cordelay, 49 days left in the Biden administration. 49 days left in the Biden administration. 1,127 or so hours left. Joe Biden pardons his son. Donald Trump uses the pardon as a foil to say, hey, this is why I have to pardon people who broke into the Capitol and committed a crime. Kind of non sequiturs to me. But either way, for the next 49 days, I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about the 77 million men and women who, unlike most of them, went to prison, paid their debt to society, did what the judge said do, did what the jury said do, and they are not, their names are not in front of the President of the United States for consideration. Now, how do we get them there? And will Joe Biden's pardons stop with just his son, or will he see other sons, the sons of bus drivers and cab drivers and Uber drivers and workers in our community who want their sons who've been through the criminal justice system redeemed just like Hunter Biden's life was redeemed? Dr. Corte.
Well, I mean, I think that's one of the most important questions that folks are reflecting on today, and perhaps one of the important questions that President Biden will reflect on his travel back to the United States from Africa later this week, but reflect on them, but more importantly, act on them. Look, we know that
Amen.
President Biden pardoned his son Hunter in what was the 26th pardon of his presidency, but also remember that Biden pardoned thousands of others for simple marijuana possession. I've spoken to some of my sources at the Department of Justice that seem to believe that there may be a mass pardon afoot. Not a lot of details to share at this hour, but it's unclear if President Biden will deliver another mass pardon before he leaves office, and if so, what that mass pardon will focus on. Mum is the word. This is what was shared with me on background, but a very reliable source of the Department of Justice had shared with me that there is reason to believe that it's not a matter of if, but when that mass pardon is made public.
So let's talk about this mass pardon for a second, because if Hunter Biden were part of the mass pardon, there would be no need to pardon him individually, right? Because the same language that Joe Biden would use for a mass pardon is the same language that would apply to Hunter Biden. But when one analyzes the language in the pardon that was given to Hunter Biden, full, complete, and absolute, with the pardon that was given to Richard Nixon, full, complete, and absolute, I'm wondering whether or not the mass pardon will be full, complete, and absolute. And the reason I raised that question is because the Nixon language says from 1969 to 1974, all offenses that Richard Nixon may not, or may have participated in. Hunter Biden has similar language in his pardon. To say a mass pardon for marijuana, well, that wouldn't quite fit Hunter, maybe on the drug addiction, but it won't fit the gun offense. In other words, many people who might be available for a mass pardon, there are specifics in their cases that the mass pardon may not apply to, and therefore these pardons must be looked at individually and not just en masse, because, hey, I forgive you for marijuana, but I'm not going to forgive you for breaking and entering. I'm not going to forgive you for carjacking or something else. So you're still a felon. You're still a felon without the individual pardon. Your thoughts, Dr. Corte?
I think that is spot on, and I think that is the critique that this president is going to continue to hear in his remaining weeks in office. And I think it's a fair critique. It's not just that Hunter Biden got a pardon from his father, but it was a pardon above all pardons. It is a pardon akin to the kind of pardon language that, to your point, we heard when former President Nixon was pardoned. And so, if anything, I think by doing it this way, it has raised expectations that if there is a mass pardon that's coming, I think to your point, folks are going to be comparing the language of that mass pardon to Hunter Biden's language in his pardon. And a lot of people are saying, if it was good enough for your son, what about the sons and daughters of so many other folks, where a pardon really makes the difference between a real second chance versus simply just being freed from the prison wall.
Now, this is the first time, as far as I can tell, in the history of our community that we've had conversations about the presidential pardon power on the level and on the scale that we are discussing it. We are all the way down to the nitty-gritty language of the language that was used for Richard Nixon's life, which we now know is no different than Hunter Biden's life in terms of how the government sees it. In fact, I need a pardon. I've applied for a pardon. That's pretty well known. It's been written about in a number of newspapers. I want Hunter Biden language in my life. I don't want any language, second-class language or third-class language. If I'm fortunate enough to be granted a pardon, I want the same pardon for Harold Washington, for Alcee Hastings, for William Jefferson out of Louisiana, for Corinne Brown, for Shaka Fatah out of Pennsylvania, for Kwame Kilpatrick. I want the same pardon for the bus driver, for the plumber, for the Uber driver, for the Lyft driver, for the hotel worker who paid their debt to society, while other people have their lives restored, Nixon and Hunter Biden, and they don't go to jail a single day. I believe we are better than that, Dr. Corte.
Yeah, and can I just say, Jesse, how much I appreciate you being so transparent about your own situation and about your own request for a pardon. And I really just appreciate the fact that by you sharing your story and being so transparent about it, it has really served as an education to me and as an education to so many other people who are less familiar with the world of pardons and pardon attorneys and how this stuff works. I didn't know until our conversation that, to get a pardon attorney in Washington, D.C., to make the case, just make the case for a pardon, you're talking about anywhere between $250,000 to $500,000. That's not cheap. Most people can't afford that, right? And so there are so many people that are counting on this president before he leaves office to deliver them not just a modicum of justice, but full justice using the full weight of the power of his pen to deliver a pardon that is akin to that of Richard Nixon and now that of Hunter Biden.
There is a case called United States versus Wilson. This is the case where once a person was pardoned, he turned around and gave it back to the government. He said, I don't want it. Listen, I like Hunter Biden's language, but I'm reflecting upon second-class language. If it's unacceptable, if my life is less than Hunter's or less than Nixon, I'm going to think about Wilson. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580. We'll be right. We're coming forward with Dr. Corte.
While you're stuck in traffic, we can at least bring you up to speed on the news of the day. You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. only on KBLA Talk 1580.
Tips to help improve basic steps for building a budget in 2024. Building a budget can help you achieve and reach your financial goals. With a budget, you can keep track of your spending, avoid and get out of debt, limit overspending, pay bills on time, and build solid savings habits. What's the best way to get started? Figure out how much to set aside for expenses, like rent, mortgage, bills, groceries, and entertainment. Understanding your past financial habits can help you make the proper adjustments for your budget. Adjusting to a budget can take time as you work to find the right balance, but keep working on it. For more financial health tips, visit chase.com or stop by a local branch. This segment is sponsored by J.P. Morgan Chase & Company.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 reminds you that we keep us safe. The Live Your Life organization mentors young women, helping them break negative mindsets and see beyond their surroundings. Through career exposure and hands-on training, they're encouraged to think big, stay focused, and make positive choices. Founded by Nikisha Mama Boo Smith, who transformed her life to become a community leader. Live Your Life is changing lives, but they need your help. They're raising funds to keep their new building open and expand their programs. Your donations will support food, clothes, hygiene products, and holiday giveaways. Visit Live Your liveyourlife32.com. That's liveyourlife32.com to help today. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
The California Crusader newspaper would like to thank all of our subscribers for their support throughout the years, proudly serving the South Los Angeles and South Bay areas for more than 40 years. The California Crusader is a multicultural, black-owned, adjudicated newspaper that focuses on providing newsworthy information to the people in our community. We're constantly looking for ways to assist businesses in our community to connect with our subscribers. We provide low-cost, effective ways to promote your business with our reasonable and affordable advertising rates. You can participate by suggesting, sharing, and submitting your stories on the California Crusader newspaper Community Share Facebook group page, or visit our website at cal-cruise-news.com. That's calcruisenews.com. Then click on the Submit Now button located on the top right corner of the homepage, or text CCN to 42828. Again, text CCN to 42828. The California Crusader newspaper, working together to build a better community for our future. Subscribe today.
You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580. My guest is Dr. Nia Corte. Dr. Corte, you wrote a wonderful book on Kamala Harris off of a trip that you took with her around Africa. Tell us about that.
I did. This summer I published my first book called Kamala, the Motherland, and Me. It is an invitation to re-examine our assumptions about Madam Vice President, about the continent of Africa and ourselves. I had the good fortune of traveling with the Vice President, along with other members of the press corps, to Ghana and Tanzania and Zambia in spring of 2023. And, Jesse, what I witnessed was really a love letter to the Black diaspora. The areas of focus for this trip, including working with partners in Africa around reorganizing their debt so they can invest more in innovation and not just servicing their debt, really lifting up some of the climate resilience work that's afoot on the continent. Who knew that in places like Zambia, you had farmers outside of Lusaka, their capital, that were using AI-powered technology to fight against climate change, right? And being able to bear witness to the first Black woman vice president of Tanzania turned first Black woman president of Tanzania in her meeting with Vice President Harris. It was really extraordinary. And Jesse, I'm calling this book Required Reading. Required reading for this inflection point we find ourselves in world history. And so I hope that all of our leaders, learners, and listeners who haven't already will consider grabbing this book, Kamala, the Motherland, and Me, so that we, when the story is told about Vice President Kamala Harris, who she was, what she accomplished when she was in office, here at home and abroad, people will get the story right.
Thank you very much for that. And for our listeners, you can find Dr. Corte's book on Amazon.com. It is a brilliant and a wonderful piece of work and a real historical narrative of what Kamala Harris has done, who she is, and what she represents for us in the context of the diaspora. Now, some of this, Dr. Corte, is a look backwards at Kamala Harris as Vice President of the United States. But my question for you, she has 49 days left. What would you advise your friend to whisper into the ear of Joe Biden in the remaining 49 days?
Well, I will. I'll say this because my job is to cover the vice president. My job is to make sense out of what is afoot here in Washington, and particularly at the White House. I think history will look to see how this former prosecutor, who served as prosecutor in the city and county of San Francisco, first Black woman attorney general for the state of California, first Black woman to represent California United States Senate. How does all of that lived experience, how does all of that public service come to play in these remaining weeks of the administration. I think a lot of people would hope that there would be some level of conversation, some diplomacy, some advocacy that is taking place between the Naval Observatory and the Oval Office in these remaining weeks. And I think history is watching, and I think the Vice President is acutely aware of that.
I think history is watching clearly, and I also think because of her prosecutor, her successful career as a prosecutor in the state of California, that she also has an obligation to balance the scales of justice. She has locked up a lot of people, right? And she's come up with programs to help many of them transition back into society, but she's never been in a position to provide people with a state or a federal pardon. One of the things that she could do going forward in the next 49 days is to whisper in President Joe Biden's ear, President Biden, the world has now seen what the language of freedom looks like. As you move forward in the pardon process, make sure you treat everyone's son and daughter the same way you treated your son and daughter. I'd like to hear Kamala Harris make that case. Is there any possibility that it can happen in the next 49 days?
I think anything is possible in the next 49 days, and you better believe if I even get a whisper of that happening, I will be sure to share it with you and our leaders, learners, and listeners on KBLA Talk 1580 as soon as I hear it. But I think you also raise a very important point. We know that President-elect Trump hasn't been shy about flirting with the idea of pardoning the January 6th insurrectionists. I think there's an opportunity for President Biden to draw a strong contrast, if that were to happen, to draw a strong contrast between, pardoning folks who have been the subject of a miscarriage of justice versus pardoning raw lawlessness. Dare I say, folks, who have walked the line of treason in as far as our Constitution is concerned. And so I think, the presidency is not over yet. I think the sitting president, has an opportunity to draw a stark contrast between the president-elect. The question is, when and will he do it?
I think that ultimately is the question. And at this hour, we remain very, very prayerful for our people against the backdrop of our history and whether or not the government that Lincoln on July 4th referred to in his Gettysburg Address as a result of his trip to Gettysburg on November 19th, 1863, that government of, for, and by the people shall not perish from the face of the earth. When I think about the glory of this nation, I think about the role that African Americans have played in shaping the democracy. When I think about our struggle through the Constitution to change the course of American history and ultimately world history, when I think about our contribution, so much of that came together at the Democratic Convention this year. So much of it came together in Kamala Harris's sojourn to Africa and a real display of her identity as our people have progressed through time. Dr. Corte, we only have a couple of minutes remaining in this program. Share with us some final thoughts.
Well, I really appreciate you walking us through that history. Just like you and so many of our listeners, I consider myself a student of history. I'm a history buff. Call me crazy, but I actually think that scene from Black Panther when T'Challa's getting his butt whooped and the Queen Mother yells out, "Remember who you are. Remember who you are." And so I really appreciate you, helping us to remember our history and reminding us not just who we are, but from where we come. And as you were sharing that, I was thinking about the preamble to the Constitution, which I know means so much to you as it has meant to me and so many folks. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice. Establish justice. Those are some of the earliest words of the Constitution. There's nothing more American than that. And so I certainly hope that as this president and this administration, reflect on not just what they've done, but what they still have the power to do. Between now and January 20th at noon, they don't have to go any further than the beginning of our Constitution. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice. Establish justice.
There has never been.
I hope we're able to see it.
There has never been a country in the history of the world so conceived. I talk to our brothers and sisters from one end of the country all the time, as some of them are blacker than most. Some of them got their fist in the air. But there is nothing like America. It is the only country in the history of the world that we have the power to actually change. I know she's stubborn. I know she doesn't want to make room for more people. But every victory that we've ever fought, we've won. The only time that we have ever lost is when we gave up the fight. We are not going to go backwards. We are not going to stop fighting. We are going to keep hope alive, and we're going to do it right here on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. with my special guest, Dr. Nai Corte. We're so grateful that you joined us, and we'll see you tomorrow.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Tyreek Wynn with 4 things you should know from BIN News. Community members are mourning the death of a civil rights pioneer in South Carolina. James Solomon Jr. was one of 3 black students who desegregated the University of South Carolina in 1963. He recently